and how did I end up here? Okay. And so I'm going to just go ahead and share with you what ended up happening. I was part of this group practice in Chicago from 1996 to 2004. But in 2002, Rochelle and I, we had our first 3 kids, and we started talking about how can we increase our flexibility. Okay. And we were even willing of my time in order to have more time with our family as we were growing our family. And we were willing to do that even in lieu of an increase in income. And I planned that for about 9 months and planned to go into the head of the practice and do some bargaining, some rearranging of my schedule. But after 9 months of planning that, all the docs were actually asked to start putting more time in clinic weekly just to keep the practice going. Okay. And I suddenly realized as a young doctor and a young dad how not in control of my time and my future I was, that there were outside factors dictating where I spent my time, and that my time could be taken away even more in the future without my choice. And how many of you that are listening to this have ever found yourself in that situation and started questioning the path you were on? Okay, so this is where I was. And the question I asked myself was, is there a way to create an independent source of income that would give me decision-making power over how my time was spent and yet still enable me to make a difference in people's lives, which is why I was a doctor in the first place. And by the way, if you haven't already, I know Alan mentioned you guys are eating lunch, which is wonderful. It's amazing how we can do this business around our lives. I will suggest having a pen and paper by you just for you can write down. You may pick up a key phrase or word or idea that you realize you want to bring into your conversations or anchor for yourself, because these are some of the things that really made a difference for me. So I asked myself this question. I had some core desires, which I imagine many of you can relate to, which included, of course, making a difference in people's lives, improving lives. That's why I was a doctor. And I also wanted a good life with my family. And I started to find those in conflict because I wanted more time, I realized, with our kids as they were growing up. And I wanted the power to choose. I started recognizing that, because how many of you, it makes a difference, it feels different if you choose to work versus if you have to work. Okay, it feels different, doesn't it? And I wanted that power to choose where I practice, how I served, and where I invested my time. Well, lo and behold, somebody had the courage to invite me to take a look at what's here. And by the way, I'll just mention this person who invited me went through a lot of other people that he knew better than me. We were just acquaintances. Okay. And I believe just about everyone, if not everyone before me, said no. They didn't choose to do anything with this business. And I am so glad that he had the courage. And that's a word I would write down today, courage. He had the courage to keep going and give me and my family our chance to know about this business without having it dependent on what other people chose or didn't choose before me. And it opened a door that totally changed my family's life. Okay, so here's what attracted me to Nu Skin and the leadership team. The first thing that was different for me in all my years of schooling and education and then work as a doctor, the idea of being able to create leverage, at this point in my life with the questions I was asking became very significant for me, but it was something I didn't know existed. As a physician or anyone, self-employed or having clients, we're trading our time one-on-one, working with people. And so to be able to create leverage that could extend beyond me, build something that could extend beyond me was a totally new concept for me and really intrigued me. And it also was significant that I could invite others into this, okay? Because I actually knew of other doctors who had gone on to create their own newsletters or their own product lines. In fact, there's one who was in the Chicago area with me who is big online now, okay? His name rhymes with Coca-Cola, so some of you might know of him. And I actually got to care for his sister while she was pregnant at one point. But what I realized is that path still would involve me just being a solo practitioner with customers and employees, but not really being able to invite others into partnership or the same experience with me. And so what I love about this business and what I started to see right away was that it was a true equal opportunity. Okay, many of you, probably all of you know by now, not everyone will choose to do this or to go further with, from wherever they are, but they have the opportunity to. Okay, other moms, for me, it was other moms and dads because I was caring for young families in the office, and anyone else who wanted greater freedom and impact, just like I did. I loved the fact that this was a vehicle that they could do this as well. Okay, they didn't have to be a doctor or a certain profession if they had the desire. So that really attracted me. And with that was a commitment to excellence and to leadership. One of the first times, actually, Alan, it's interesting we're having a lunchtime chat here because one of my first major experiences was being in a little apartment or condo overlooking Lake Michigan, I think in Chicago. Maybe there were 8 or 10 others there, including Artemis Limper, who many of you know, and she has been a great mentor to me and partner during this whole transition from medicine to this business and now partnering to grow it beyond, anything I had experienced before. But I got to meet several others, just like you guys are on Zoom today. And there was something about that time together that I felt this commitment to excellence and leadership. And even though everyone in that room, no one else was a doctor. Okay, no one else was a health professional. They all had different backgrounds, but I saw this common denominator of leadership, of excellence, and of desire to make a difference in the world while building a business and an income that could give me and my family leverage and freedom. And the fact that all those things could come together in one place really attracted me. Okay. Another factor in value that I saw very significant here is the mentorship that's available. Because for me, whether it was in sports or in music, and eventually in medicine and being part of the practice as a part of in the Chicago area that did some unique things, having mentors. Always, I saw the value of that allowed me to leap ahead of what you could just get from a textbook or just reading things online and really get close to people who had an experience in an area that I wanted to excel in. So seeing that we had access to mentorship like that here really attracted me, and the fact that I could, again, invite others into that as well. Okay, so what happened? So here are just some pictures of my family. So partway through my business, we actually moved from the Chicago area, about 18 months into it, to Michigan, the Michigan side of Lake Michigan, across the lake from Chicago. And I think, the first week that we moved there, we loaded up our family. We had our first 3 kids at that time. We got in an old Chevy Suburban that we had, drove all the way down to Dallas to an event with Artemis and some leaders there, just like you guys have had many special events with Alan and with the team that you're a part of. And it really, that really impacted me, those kinds of events. But I actually was able, in that case, that particular event, to bring my family along. And then right after we got back, I think this was about 1 week after we moved to Michigan, my wife went into labor with our, it was our 4th child. Okay, our 2nd son. And I was asking her, do you want me to call one of our doctor partners or nurse partners to hop on over here? And all of a sudden she was ready to push. So that kind of answered that. And I got the privilege of being there. In fact, I got to be present for all 7 of our kids who were born at home. It was one of the special arenas our doctor and health practice specialized in the Chicago area. And this just shows some of our families. We were growing up in Lake Michigan. Now, in the beginning, as a family doctor and then adding a business like this on top of it, at first, you're adding more, right? I had this desire to have more time with my family, and now I've added something that, in a sense, takes me away even more. But here's the difference. I realized that what I was sowing here, even in just slivers of time to begin with, that this sowing, these little slivers of time, were actually growing something that could eventually give me back my time. Unlike my work as a physician, which was more like treading water, there was no end in sight. And if I ever stopped, my income would just stop completely as well. Okay. Now, as our business grew and as I got more confident and as our time advanced, I got to work more flexibly around our family. So you see our daughter here, Gigi, our oldest, who's now 23 and actually just became a new brand rep with us in the business. But this is when she was a little younger, dancing. and I got to drive her and be at a lot of her dance events along with my wife, Rochelle. She went on to do a strongman competition and then live overseas. In the middle is one of my sons with football, and then we had a whole season of basketball, a season in his life of basketball. On the left here, you see our youngest, Archer, who's no longer in a sling. Actually, he's now 7, but this was in Michigan, riding and going with me places. And as Facebook, started becoming popular and we started spending more time on social media, he started becoming kind of my social media buddy in a lot of my pictures and videos until he got older like his siblings and started protesting. Okay. All right. But you can see life as a family and the beauty of being able to work a business around your family. Now, what's interesting is while we were in this little town in New Buffalo, Michigan, which is a little resort town, okay, across the lake from Chicago, we actually met someone who led to someone else who both started in our business, who led to someone else who also got started in their business. And that person was a part-time mom in the business who wanted a portable income that she could take with her anywhere because she knew her husband got transferred to different countries every couple of years. And they were from France and sure enough got transferred to England. And this is kind of interesting because during that time, this was before social media, and she was working part-time. She was working in another country. We tried to do long distance phone calls, but there were some challenges there. And the two people above her were big producers. I think at least one of them was a multiple six-figure income earner in their other life, their other business that they had. And they actually had fast success here. But in the long run, it ended up being this mom who got transferred with her husband to England, Marion Couffin, who ended up persisting in the business and leading to another partner, Emmanuel Tixier, in Paris, and eventually a network of leaders throughout Europe that has now consists of a number of Team Elites, Blue Diamonds, and Circle of Excellence 1 earners. So what I wanted to share with you here, though, is it expanded our world. Okay, because I was with my family, even before we had Zoom and everything else, we were doing a lot of work long distance by conference calls. And our first couple leaders, Marion and Emmanuel, actually came to the US to meet the company and train with Artemis and myself and the team. So I didn't actually go to France for the first few years that was developing. Eventually got to go there, and now you can see, I think the top picture is an event possibly in Southampton, the lower left, another event, I think maybe in London. And then at the upper left is our two oldest daughters and my sister who were traveling in Europe, got to rendezvous in Paris. And then my daughters got to stay with one of the families, Fred and Louise Six, who are now Blue Diamonds in Paris. And so this just opened up, again, rich relationships and things I never even imagined would come to us because of this business and building this business. On the right, you can see Fred and Louise, Emmanuel, and some other leaders, and we went to this house. You can see the ocean there, and then you can see the house in the middle there. This is a house that's been in Fred's family for, I think, 150 years. And imagine, I mean, we probably couldn't have found a place like this on Airbnb or anywhere else. But, and also we certainly wouldn't have been with great friends and partners like this there, but we had just a delightful, I think, couple days there as a team, connecting there and being in this beautiful place. And again, I had no idea that starting this business to have more time with our family would open up the world to us and to our family. Okay. So let's go back now to you. What does this mean for you as we're talking about the story? And one question that I realized is, what do we value? How many of you have heard of Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Business of the 21st Century? And I once saw a clip on YouTube where he talked about not just the 4 quadrants, but he talked about what the different quadrants value. And it really stood out to me. And I just wanted to highlight a couple things here in 2 columns here. So many of us, you know, at some point in our life engaged in what you might call typical employment, working for someone else. I think maybe Alan is one of those unique ones who never worked for anybody else, okay? But many of us did. And what often people value that are in this category, especially that stay in this employment column, is they tend to value security, perhaps comfort or sense of comfort and predictability. Okay. They like having known limits and boundaries, knowing if I put in this many hours, I'm going to get paid this much, and then I can clock out, you know, and so on. And so they work for someone else who actually owns the business and takes the risks because this is what they value and where they're comfortable. And I have a couple siblings who have been invited not only by me, but also by other startup companies outside of our industry to, because of their excellence, to possibly being part of them. And they realize they like this security and predictability of being employed and letting someone else kind of take the risk. And there's no judgment there. That's just what they value. Okay, so I want to just paint a contrast here for those of us that stepped into this right-hand column, the business owner, entrepreneur, because what do we value? We tend to value freedom. Okay, and for that freedom, we're willing to tolerate, or we have a higher tolerance for uncertainty and risk, or stepping into the unknown. Okay, because we love possibility. I loved, even at first when I was working more than ever, I was working full-time as a doctor and then trying to learn this business in slivers of time. So I was working more than ever, even before the income started to show up, but the possibility was there. The possibility of growing something that was leveraged and giving me back my time. And that possibility really attracted me and motivated me to put the time and the effort in. Okay. Second in this column is we get paid based on the value we bring to others rather than just our time. Okay. And then third, that unlimited potential. I also love that there wasn't a ceiling to what I could create. I'm just going to circle a few words on here: possibility, value, potential, because those are kind of the highlight. Now, the other thing I realized is that you don't necessarily stay in the left column all your life. Many of us may have started out at one point. That was the column where we wanted to be. But at some point, we started having that yearning for greater freedom, and we were willing to step out, and we moved to this right-hand column and started to embrace these other values. Okay, and that also gives you a clue of who you might be looking for that's ready for you in December of 2020 and going into 2021, because they're at this point in their life too. Now, another concept that I felt was very powerful that I started to realize is, what are we engaged in? Okay, because in a lot of the traditional world of employment, and even a lot of businesses and sales, even me as a doctor, it's very transactional. You're trading time for money, or you're selling a car or a house for a commission, but then you need to go sell another one for any income to come in. Okay. Now, at first, with some of the things, especially on social, with whitening toothpaste or some of the products on social, this business can start out transactionally, but it can lead to building an asset. And that became a huge value and significance for me, as I realized that we here learn to build a network, and your network becomes your asset as you invest in and develop people. Okay. Now that can be both challenging, okay, having to learn to work with other people and have a business that might seem like it depends on other people, but that's also what causes us to grow and have such enriching experiences, like how our world opened up with the connections, I showed you in the photos a few minutes ago. And those relationships, those networks are extremely valuable, perhaps more valuable today and going forward than ever before. Okay. Plus, we get to connect people with solutions that they love, and they reorder on a recurring basis, even if they're in another city or another country. Okay. So our business can go from local to global and be essentially geographically independent. And then we also get to provide the same kind of connection to leadership, innovation, and mentoring, that we all got to be invited into too. So I thought that was some interesting food for thought. Now, I wanted to give you a little picture of another person, okay, because she kind of illustrates at different stages of her life. She illustrates these different stages that we often walk through that I kind of just described. And this is Tiffaine in France, in the south of France. And in her 20s, like many of the people you may be first encountering today, okay, in her 20s, she was a commercial director, which is working in the corporate world in sales, I believe. That's just what they call it there in France. And it was like a dream job. She's a young person. She's driven. She's got energy. She's probably making good money, getting recognition. And she loved that in her 20s. Okay. However, once she hit her 30s, and this transition, these kinds of transitions, I think, if I'm observing, and I imagine some of you can confirm this for yourselves, I'm observing that the transitions I'm going to describe are actually happening faster and faster, in shorter time frames in people's lives. Like within months, people's lives are changing now instead of years. Okay. But for her, the next phase was in her 30s, where she had what is a lot of people's dream that you're going to encounter is she started working for herself, having her own business, being self-employed as an image consultant. Okay. So she's using her creativity and gifts and what she loves in image consulting. That was kind of what she loved. And she's able to make a business of it and get paid for it. So that's what she dreamed. And you may be encountering people who are at that stage in their life. And at first you think, they would never do this because, they're already doing what they love. Okay, but here's the thing that happened. She did become a customer of Nu Skin. The first step for her was experiencing the product and becoming a customer, I think for a couple of years. Okay, and then the next phase of her life, which essentially was getting into her 40s, she started realizing, at the end of the day, after 10 years of my dream of being an image consultant and working for myself, at the end of 10 years, I'm still, these are her words, I'm still broke and I'm still working alone. Okay. How many of you may be in conversation or connected to people who on the surface seem to be really successful, doing well, but little do you know, their heart is yearning for something different going into 2021. And it's these kinds of stories that help me have the courage and boldness to keep reaching out to others. Okay, so she realized she was still broke. She was still working alone. She loved the Nu Skin products. So she suddenly realized, why don't I make this my vehicle? Now, I'm sure she had been invited to do that before, but suddenly it clicked for her. And this was a few years ago. I think in 2017, she became a brand rep. Okay, and then partway through the year, she took the decision. That's how they say it in France, took the decision to really make this her vehicle and go further. And I think in 1 month, she went from like gold to ruby. That's having, 4 leaders, as many of you know, working with her. And by the end of the year, she had 13 brand reps, 13 leaders working with her, having their own customers and brand affiliates and so on. And she multiplied her income that year with Nu Skin about 8 to 10 times. Okay. And she since then has gone on to become Team Elite. She's a single mom. And she also just recognized that she could bring all that love of having her own business, of creativity, of working with people, of expressing herself, and having the lifestyle here. And that's what I'm inviting you to kind of get a glimpse of through my story, through her story, through the stories you know. And so again, one of the powers that we have here is that there's no external ceiling. In fact, you kind of become your own ceiling here, okay, where you want to take things. Second, you can live where you want. Okay, so you saw that partway through my business, we moved across the lake to New Buffalo, Michigan. Well, a few years ago, we moved down here to Louisville, Kentucky. As after having all 7 of our kids and already getting to Blue Diamond. And what's interesting is, of course, people ask us or assume that we came down here for my job or my work. That's the normal assumption. But I get to tell them, no, it was actually for Rochelle and the kids. I'd never been to Louisville before, but they wanted some new experiences as they were growing older, more sports and extracurricular activities without having to go to as big a city as Chicago. And because our business is portable, we're able to come down here and continue running it from Louisville. Another thought I want to give you, let's take a sip of water. And this is not college necessarily, but more thinking that people traditionally value, they could see themselves investing 4 years to get a degree. And during that 4 years, they may not be making any money. In fact, they might be earning a lot of debt, right? Okay. But they see the value of that because of the training they get. But imagine normally when you do that, you come out of those 4 years, you graduate, you have debt. You weren't making any income during that time. And now you have to go find someone to work for the rest of your life to earn the money back to pay off your debt and then basically make a living. Okay. What if you could be here? See the value here of 4 years, a few years invested where you get this high level mentoring systems and training where your graduation is you're actually built a business. You have an income generating business that has been generating income along the way and that you get to carry with you into whatever stages of life or wherever part of the world you want to live from there. Okay. So that became a huge value that, that I saw. And then just a couple highlights, some of the things we already talked about. So I'll just go through this kind of fast. The amazing people you get to connect to, the ability to partner and work together. okay, and work in partnership to have a bigger income and a bigger impact. And how about this? Your life begins to create marketing moments. For any of you that are on social media, just taking a selfie. This is on a way to an event with a few of my boys. And, and your very life can become things that you get to share and invite people into, because this business becomes a lifestyle, not just work. One of the things I love, and I think you've kind of gotten this theme from myself, from sharing to Fen, because at first people think, well, am I just selling something or doing social media or whatever it is, but that this is actually something that is big enough to engage all of us, our gifts, our skills. And when we understand that, not only can we commit to this at another level, this was key for me, but then we can be bold to invite others who maybe seem to have passions and they're expressing it somewhere else because they don't know about this yet. We can start to be bold to say, if you're open, if you're looking, this is a vehicle that would be worth, that you may find very valuable to look at, that has the potential to take who you are and express it even further in the world and be well compensated for it. In fact, I want to give you three words that I heard Artemis share that I love, that are the three characteristics we see really common to people who choose to partner here. And I love sharing these on business briefings as well. And the first one is that people who choose to partner with us long-term are people who tend to love excellence. They love having excellence brought out of them and being part of something that's bringing excellence to the world. Number two, they're people who love growth. They want to be part of something that's growing and where they can continue to grow and contribute and be compensated for that, not have a ceiling or a law of diminishing returns on what they're doing. And then number three is they're people who want to make an impact, not just an income. And even though many of us came here for practical reasons, initially to build an income for our families, that ability to open the door of possibility for others and make a difference in other lives, I think is what drives us. I know you can see Alan drives our heart long-term, and really allows us to step into a bigger and bigger vision. Okay, another fun thing is that you get to work with champions, and it brings out the champion in us. And there aren't a lot of arenas in life today that consistently you get to work with people who are striving to bring out the best in them and each other, and doing it in a business arena where we can all grow and earn together. Now, I have a little warning for you before I wrap up. Okay, so pay attention. All right, if you want to be safe and comfortable, this is not for you. Okay. Actually, I'll rephrase that. You can definitely enjoy the products. You can definitely enjoy sharing the products. But I want to suggest that we want to move beyond safe and comfortable. Okay. This is for pioneers and leaders and those who respond to that call, and leaders in the making. And because you're here, that means there's some part of you that has that characteristic and that yearning as well. And I love this quote. Okay, how many of you are familiar with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and the Narnia series? So we love reading these here in the Low Home. And I love this question from Susan asking Mr. Beaver about the lion Aslan. She says, is he quite safe? And Mr. Beaver answers, safe? That's not even the question. Okay, who said anything about safe? Of course he isn't safe. Okay, of course we're going to step into the unknown. You're going to be stretched. You're going to grow, but he's good. Okay, we can have confidence that we're going to be stretched and grow in ways that are good and that are going to enrich us and enrich others with this vehicle and the amazing leaders and partners that are here. And then here's a fun quote many of you have probably seen. If it doesn't challenge you, it won't change you. Okay, and one of the beautiful things is here is because on our own, we might be tempted to pull back from challenge. Okay, but you've heard Alan share again and again about the mentor that he had. Okay. And then in this business, we all have so many amazing mentors and partners to challenge us to continue to step forward and show up. So that's the main part with the slides. And I want to anchor this thought. I'll probably come back to this when we close, is that in the end, whatever your challenges, whatever your journey, whatever your struggles along the way, this is totally worth it. If there's something drawing you here, it's worth it to continue and go all the way with it. So I'm going to stop the slides And then what we can do is pause a moment. I might have gone a little fast, I know, for the translators, and I can go into a little bit more on the personal side with our family and some of the things that might be unique to how we built this. But I'm just going to pause and see if there's a question from Alan or Jim or anyone just based on what I shared so far. I'm going to take a sip of water.
All I can say is, wow, wow, mind-blowingly good, mind-blowingly good, really, really awesome. Thank you so much for that.
Awesome. I know it's a little harder when you just see the slides, you can't see the face, and it's hard for me not to see your faces, so that's why I took them off now. But there were some key things that I learned in my journey, and then some key things about working as a couple where Rochelle at first didn't always understand what I was doing. So if you'd like, Alan, me to comment on any of that, or if
yeah,
you feel something, that'd be great. Okay.
Yeah, those are the ones, yeah.
So, let me go back even to like really early in my business in this sense. I remember, how many of you have been challenged by Alan or your team or this business to do something that you weren't good at first? Any of you? Okay. All right. So I'm early in my business. I've already got my degrees and I already practiced as a family doctor. And now I'm starting this business. And back at that time, it was before social media. So we were actually calling people on the phone to, see if they're open to looking at a business possibility. And we were doing it in partnership, and I was with some relatively new leaders, and we were taking turns calling and giving feedback. So, and we had a little script. And I made my first call, and after I hung up and looked at the other ones around me, these were young leaders, okay, young in the business. And they basically, there's like silence at first. And then I remember one of them basically just shook his head and said, "It sounds like you're reading." And I was like, okay. I, felt a little sinking feeling. And I think I tried again. And then again, they just shook their head and said, "Still sounds like you're reading." And I'll tell you, for a split second, I had this urge to just throw the phone down and say, "Forget this. I'll just go back to being a doctor." That was, I already knew how to do that. Why do I have to do something that I'm not good at? Okay, but that was a split second. But fortunately, I didn't do that. And I had to humble myself and be willing to learn skills that I didn't have in this new arena. Okay. But because I had already I'd seen Artemis, I'd seen others, I'd seen the excellence that was here and the leverage and the potential, I realized I wanted it. Just like you heard Kiki last week, right? Sharing as a CEO, amazing life, but he realized he wanted something different. I felt the same way. So I had to humble myself and be willing to learn. And I love this phrase that I learned from Artemis, and I think she learned it from someone along the way too, to be willing to be bad enough, long enough to get good enough. And so one of the things that helped me, because I needed to be really intentional with my time, right? I'm already working full-time as a doctor. The only reason I'm doing this is to get time, but now I'm taking more time away. I want to be with my family. So I needed to be intentional, which meant I needed to let go of my resistance quickly and try things that my coaches suggested. Okay, so when we got something or when Artemis demonstrated something, I would try it quickly in conversation with somebody. And I remember once calling my wife on her phone just to practice, and she laughed at me. Okay, but that helped me because it helped me loosen up. Okay, and stop being so stiff. And it was frustrating at first, because I kept getting feedback that I was a little stiff, people weren't necessarily responding great, but I knew I wanted this. So I keep going, keep getting feedback, stayed connected to my coaches and team so I could keep adjusting and getting better. And no matter what, one of the big things. So one, I think I would write down that word willingness. I mean, if I was going to share some words with you, that was a huge one for me. Okay, willingness to be bad enough, long enough to get good enough, willingness to learn, willingness to try new things quickly. Okay, so I could get over the bad part quickly and get some experience. When we first started on social media, we didn't have any system initially. I kind of made a commitment to myself. I was going to try a couple of different platforms till I got at least one LOI or one result in each platform. And then I could decide where I wanted to focus, and that was before we started systematizing things. But so willingness is one. Okay. And a second one, a big one, is consistency. Sometimes we're so tempted. I mean, there were moments where I wish I was good already. right? Any of you ever feel that? I wish I was good already. And yet the only way to get good is I had to try these things and I had to practice and improve my skills. So I realized no matter what we were being trained, I needed to pick something and do something with it that day and that week. Even if I could only do a little bit, because I was working full-time as a doctor, I had to find a sliver somewhere. And bottom line, our business, whether it's online or offline, at some point it leads to connecting with another person, right? So that was my core focus. Who can I reach out to with whatever sliver I had? Could I reach out to at least one person, 3 people, 5 people? Who could I reach out to today with whatever time I have? So consistency was huge. Okay. Another one was because how many of you that do have other family members in your life, you sometimes feel torn? I was talking to one of our Blue Diamonds in the UK yesterday, and she's been navigating this. And this was big for me because in the beginning, there was always more to do. Always another call, always more to do. I never felt like I was doing enough. So I needed to do more. My wife and the kids that we had were always just waiting. They never knew what to expect. And then I started getting a little bit smarter. I started learning, okay, because you bump into some frustration with your spouse or your family and you start getting some clues. And one big moment was our daughter, 23 now, new brand rep, but I think when she was 11 or 12, I still use the same paper calendar, same type right now. But I remember it was on a Wednesday, I think it was a Tuesday, and she grabbed a pen, she leaned over my shoulder and she wrote on my calendar her name, Gigi, in the afternoon for Wednesday afternoon. And I laughed. And I suddenly got a clue. Wow. Instead of just always running, never always feeling pulled in multiple directions, I could actually schedule my family too. I mean, in a positive sense. So they could know and I could know what to expect. So then I started being able to communicate more with my mom, with my wife, with Gigi's mom, my wife, that, I have a conference call here, but I'll be available for dinner here, or I have a break here. And that helped her. That helped the family a lot to know what to expect. But you know what else? Who else it helped? It helped me. Because instead of feeling like when I'm doing the business, I feel bad because I'm not with family. And then with family, I feel torn because I'm not doing my business. Instead of constantly feeling torn, I actually could feel fully present. I could be present to this call, this conference, this three-way, and then I could be present to my time with my family. And it's still something, we grow as the family hits different stages and your business hits different stages, but that shift helped me a lot. So that was one key shift. Another big shift, how many of you have a spouse, or maybe it's even a grown or an older son or daughter or someone else in your life that may not be as supportive of the business or fully understand why you're doing this, okay? I encountered that in the beginning with Rochelle because there were a lot of times, it was kind of like, any of you are familiar with the story of the children of Israel crossing the Red Sea? And part way, or no, I think it was before or after they crossed the Red Sea, they're wandering in the wilderness, right? And some of them start grumbling and say, it was better for us back in Egypt. Maybe we should just go back to Egypt. Okay. Well, Rochelle and I had some of those conversations because at first I'm in the middle, right? I'm working harder. Now I'm working as a doctor and working in the business. And it seems like I'm being taken away from the family even more. And so sometimes the question is, why don't we just go back? Why don't we just go back to the way things were? And in the beginning, I tried to wrestle with her, if you will, because I tried to bring her on board to see what I saw, but she wasn't on all the calls and didn't have all the exposure that I had. And so, I had to start allowing her journey. And so what I started to discover, instead of trying to force her from where she was over here to see things the way I did, I started just gently sowing little seeds. Like on Monday night, Mondays were busy for me even in the business because Monday night I had some conference calls and things. But I remember in between going to Rochelle and saying, you know what, I am so thankful because remember when I was in practice on Monday nights, I wasn't home. Lots of times I was still seeing patients and doing charts till all of you were in bed and asleep, and I didn't come home till after you were asleep. Okay. And I'm so thankful now that even though I'm working, I'm actually able to work from home or be around you. in this time because I did a lot of this from home doing conference calls and things like that. I remember another time while we were still in transition, it was kind of stressed because some debt I had and trying to build up our income in Nu Skin to replace the income I, made as a doctor. And I remember during one of those days, I talked to a businessman from Chicago, as I was prospecting him. And he shared with me that he actually had a $10 million brick and mortar business in another industry. And I'm like, wow, because I hadn't actually had a business like that before this. And but here's what he told me. He says, it's all gone now. Things have changed and I have nothing. And he didn't know what he was going to do. And I was inviting him to look at Nu Skin as a vehicle for him. But I remember after hanging up the phone from that initial conversation, going to Rochelle, and again, just sowing the seed, anchoring it for myself and for her, saying, wow, guess what who I just talked to? And I described this guy's situation. I said, he doesn't know what he's going to do. And I'm so glad, even though we're still on our way, I'm glad that I'm not still at the point of looking for something. I actually, we have our vehicle. And now I just got to focus and keep going because we're already on our way. And I kind of shifted from trying to convince her and make her agree with me to just kind of sowing little seeds of appreciation of different things as we came along. Now, since then, she's fallen in love with this business, the lifestyle it's created, how much she and the kids get to see me as a dad. And because I did learn to communicate, they're even comfortable when I do, quote, work and do different things because they know what to expect. Okay? And they've fallen in love with the products. And it's been, an amazing journey. So those are just a couple thoughts, Alan.